Hey, everyone, thank you for being here. I'm going to just take a minute and unmute the work group presenters. Hang on 1 second, please. Mm-mm. All right, sorry about that. It takes me a minute to go through the list and allow everybody access that needs it.
Michelle Jarrett was trying to get in.
I did let her in.
You did let her in? Okay.
Oh,
Great.
Michelle, let me double check. I think I just allowed it, but let me.
Oh, she just commented her mic and camera are disabled still.
It says it's enabled on my side. Okay, she says good. All right, I see you. Okay, any other work group members? If your mic or camera is disabled, please react with a thumbs up or a hand up or something, and I can fix that as needed. Welcome, thank you for being here. I know we had a huge storm last week, so I'm especially grateful to those of you that were in the path of that storm. I know some of you, school has been canceled. Some of you are going back Thursday, I saw, and some of you, it's undetermined still. So thank you to those of you that were able to make it today. We're going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot to go through today. Let me pull up my PowerPoint here.
Michelle Beaver says she's going to rejoin because her microphone wasn't working. So she's going to come back in the waiting room shortly.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Let me minimize this so I can still see the chat here. Sorry, it's a lot to manage.
You need to learn the joy of 2 screens.
I know. Yeah, I'm in a conference room right now just so I have a little bit more space. But yes, that would be helpful. Oh, there's a bunch in the lobby. Okay. Michelle. Okay, I'm admitting all of them. I'm going to get Amelia and Michelle. Michelle, I think I already have you in here, but let me. You're showing up a couple times. Okay. Okay, so yes, thank you for being here again. We do have members of the public on this call. So members of the public, please keep yourself on mute. I don't think you have a choice, but I'm just going to say that. Also, please do not use the chat unless you're a work group member. At the end of the meeting, there will be an opportunity for the public to provide any comments that you may want to say. We don't really need to do introductions today as it's the same group of people that were here last week, but I will do a quick roll call and microphone check. Please just stay here if you're on the meeting. And we'll start with Terry Adams.
I'm here.
Awesome, thank you. Tasha Bates.
Here.
Thank you. Michelle Beavers.
Here.
Thanks, Michelle. Julie Dashiell. Not yet. Christy.
I'm here. Sorry, I'm here.
That's okay. Thanks, Julie. Christy Humberger.
She was
Yeah.
asking to be re-invited, so she may not be able to get on. She
Okay.
asked on the on Teams, but not on the regular chat.
Okay, let me see if I can. I don't see her showing. Oh, there she is. Okay, we'll go back to her. Michelle Jarrett,
Here.
Jamie Merchant,
Here.
Lori Pick.
Here.
Hi, Lori.
Hi.
Jennifer Pippin,
Here.
Chris Smith,
Here.
Ruth Witter,
I'm here.
and Amelia Zakowski.
I'm here.
Hi, Amelia. All right, we have everyone here. Christy, let me enable your mic real quick. I just got to find you in the list. There you are. Okay, Christy, you should be good.
Thanks, Amber.
You're welcome. All right, I'm back to the slideshow. Okay, so the purpose of us meeting together is because in statute, it says the department shall develop an online training program for school librarians, media specialists, and other personnel involved in the selection and maintenance of library media and collections or materials maintained on a reading list. This training must assist reviewers in complying with the requirements of section 1006.31 paren 2. The department shall make this training available no later than January 1st, 2023, and then no later than July 1st, 2023, and annually thereafter. Each superintendent must certify to the department that all school librarians and media specialists employed by the district have completed this online training. So that is why we are here today. Last week, we continued to discuss bullets from our summary that was outlined in the initial PowerPoint. So I'm going to pull those up. And again, these are some of the notes and points that you made last week. The goal here is to capture all of the essentials so that when we start building the training, we have all of the pieces in front of us. This is not set in stone. So if you want to add something or clarify something, please definitely do that at this time, and I'll make adjustments. So I don't think I really need to read this to you. We discussed, I'll briefly go over it, procedures for developing collections. And we talked about how the requirement is an overall district policy. Schools may have individual policies, and that the student population drives collection development. We also talked about book selections meeting the criteria of section 1006.40 paren 3 paren D, and that's the one that says that they need to be free of pornography and material prohibited under, that's that harmful to minors statute 847.012. They need to be suited to student needs and comprehension and appropriate for the grade level and age group. Members brought up perhaps using electronic filtering software to to red flag words or phrases, and other members were saying that takes the content out of the context. There's an expense with that, and that there are existing systems that fulfill those needs. And who decides the words that would be the red flags was also brought up. And then someone else said providing content warning stickers or labels is an option districts can take. Someone mentioned that we need to establish community standards, like if they can't say it on the radio, we shouldn't have it in a book. And then the law already says prevailing standards of the community. So that's a lot. Just take a second here. And is there anything that I missed for these first two sections? Okay, we'll go ahead and move to the next one. And this is, again, we're continuing with what we talked about last time, requiring consultation of reputable, professionally recognized reviewing periodicals and school community stakeholders. We talked about suggestion boxes and readers' interest surveys, using the library advisory committee or a similar committee in those collection development plans. Just general library committees to consult and provide input about purchases or before purchases are made. And then we talked about providing for collections based on reader interest in support of state academic standards and curriculum and the academic needs of students and faculty. And again, we talked about readers' interest surveys and suggestion boxes. Someone talked about purchasing the books off of the best standards book lists. Using your collection development plan and the needs of your school. Example, if you have gifted populations or high ELL populations, providing materials based on your population. Also looking at your school mission and vision statements and school improvement plan. Budget, of course, is always a huge consideration. And the last one is that sometimes there's special curriculum needs for certain books. Someone said auto mechanic books or like vet tech books if your school is a specialized school in that way. And sometimes there's no peer reviews available for those kinds of things, so that maybe we should consider adding, if available, to that peer review section. Anything to add or change on this slide?
So are we looking at the slide to change, or are we just looking over what we've already talked about?
We are looking over what we already talked about, and if I missed something, or if something doesn't make sense, this is your opportunity to bring that up.
Okay, so the previous slide, when we talked about using a filtering system.
Mm-hmm.
So I had an idea on that one, and that was, we already have in our schools, like if a child gets on the internet and tries to do certain keyword searches, it'll will pop in saying that's not available or you can't search that information.
Right.
So there kind of is an already built-in list we could utilize for that, for using something like we talked about thunderstone.com. So we could already use an existing list that's already been approved of words that we've already agreed on. Not we, but that the DOE's already agreed on that, or the school district already agreed on that they should not be searchable by the children. So what about using that list as just one of our layers for looking at books? I was thinking a lot about this last week, and the filtering system could be one layer. Looking at 3 or 4 book reviews could be another. Checking on to see if the book has been already on a list of books we shouldn't buy, and then possibly publishing the list that the librarian plans to buy ahead of time. So any community members could come up and have a problem with the book. They could vet that book before it gets purchased, and there could be basically a second set of eyes besides the librarian looking at it saying, okay, there might be some issue with this book.
I agree with that, with what Michelle said. Just what we do with curriculum. So curriculum is open to the public for parents, community members, grandparents to go through. So we could do that same process with books. So it's not put all on that librarian or whoever certified in the school to be able to look at books. So this way there's not so much pressure on the media center specialists.
So in terms of that electronic filtering, though, that's part of COPPA compliance. So that's the Federal Trade Commission. So that's a federal law. And that's just part of that enforcement that has to do with children that are 13 and up. I mean, that goes to federal law. And so I think what we need to concentrate on is the 847.012. Which has those 3 factors, which determines harmful to minors, and then going to 847.012, which determines which is the obscenity law. So, when we're looking at creating this training, that has to follow Florida state statutes. And so I think we have to keep this training for Florida state statutes. And determine, that harmful to minors piece, I think, is what we have to determine. And as a work group, determining that harmful to minors piece is what seems to be what would drive our then training for media specialists. So coming to a consensus on what is harmful to minors, I think, is going to be what's going to be important.
Okay, so exactly building on that, I agree with you. And last time we talked about, or you pointed out that maybe, pornography and sexually explicit were not the same thing. And you're right, they're not the same thing. In my mind, they are, because when you're reading a book, you're creating a scene in your head. And that scene to me is almost the same as seeing a picture, because that's what the whole idea of reading is. You're creating something. But if you want to separate them out, that's great. But why would we reinvent the wheel? If they already found words that would not be appropriate for your children to see because it would be inappropriate, then that's exactly what we're talking about. And so why would we not use those words that aren't even of our choosing, that are federally decided upon, as a filtering? I'm not saying if the word, let's say, erection is in a book, that necessarily that book is bad. I'm saying it gives us pause to say, okay, so why is that word in there? Let's look closer at this book. It just gives us a layer, not a definitive, oh my gosh, there's that word, the book's out of here. It's just simply an indicator that we need to look a little closely at that book to make sure there's nothing in there that violates our laws. And I'm building on that. So I sent a slide to Amber. Trying to find my.
Yes, sorry. Let's pause for a second, because I'm hearing a lot of really great discussion about pornography, which I know we all want to talk about. Let's try to get through some of this, because this is what we talked about last time, and I'm hearing that some of this needs to be revised and it does need more discussion. Let's get to what we need to talk about today. There's a pornography section in there too, so we will bring that all up. So I'm just going to move ahead if that's okay. I know that the slide that you're seeing is not ideal. It captures a little bit of what we talked about. I know it's not what we would present for the training. Like, please don't think any of this is what we're going to present. These are just ideas to throw at you for you to react to, so that we can, accurately get this on paper. Let me go back to we talked about that. Okay, so way of work, that brings us back to today. Next steps, we are meeting. We do have a scheduled meeting October 11th. That's next Tuesday again. Possible additional meeting on October 18th and perhaps the 25th. We would also like to have our last or second to last meeting be face-to-face here in Tallahassee. I wanted to get your reactions to those possible dates. October 25th or November 1st. They're both Tuesdays. Would it be, would it be feasible for you to attend a meeting up here in Tallahassee on either of those dates?
Do you want us to put in the chat, like I put the chat date of the November 1st one for face-to-face? Would that be easier to get the opinion of everybody, is to put it in the chat? Or do you want us to say, go through the
raise
roll and do?
hands. Would October, and I know that you're gonna have to check with your families, you're gonna have to check with work and get subs and all, I know it's huge. But just like, if you're not available, you're not available, and that's okay to say. Would you be available possibly for October 25th? Go ahead and raise your hand, the little reactions button, if October 25th would work. Jennifer, you had your hand up already. Are you also available on October 25th?
I could get coverage for work on either day, Amber.
Okay, perfect. So I see Jennifer, Christy, Ruth, Jamie, and Michelle. Okay, and what about, and then go ahead and put your hands down, please, and raise them if you're available the November 1st date.
Michelle has her physical hand up, not her reaction hand up, just so you see that.
I'll take it. Okay, well, I'm seeing a lot more that are available for November 1st, and that makes sense because it's a little further out. I see at least 10 hands up plus Michelle's physical hand. That counts. Okay, I'm gonna have to think that over a little bit in terms of planning, but let's hypothetically plan on November 1st for a face-to-face meeting. And that would be here at the department. It would of course be much longer than an hour. I'm hoping we can spend, all day or a good portion of the day, like really hammering out exactly. Hopefully it would be our last meeting and we could really put the training together, because I know it's difficult virtually. Okay. Let's go back to this. So these are the last two bullets in our initial summary. And hopefully we can start piecing together all of these elements to create the content of the training. So let's talk about providing for the regular removal or discontinuance of books based on, at a minimum, physical condition, rate of recent circulation, alignment to state standards, state academic standards, and relevancy to curriculum, out-of-date content, and required removal pursuant to subparagraph A2.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we sort of talked about that last week also, using either the musty rule or the crew rules. We were talking about weeding as it goes throughout the year, not just at the end of the year, or with damaged goods or items that might become obsolete within your own collection, correct?
Yes, we did talk about this. I think it was at the very first meeting, briefly. This is a little bit more, it brings up recent circulation, it brings up academic standards. We did talk about out-of-date content. Is there anything else to say that has not already been said about this bullet point?
The thing that gets tricky here is the fact that the funds coming in from the state don't meet the 10% that, I mean, we're supposed to have at least 10 books per student. And that's where it becomes difficult for a lot of our libraries. Speaking as a, loving to weed, I love to do it. It's like one of those things we keep wanting to do, but folks are hesitant because they know there's not funds to fill in those books. And so I don't know I don't know that there is a current updated numbers that you're supposed to have due to databases now, but we do need to remind people that they do need to have, the 10 books per one student suggestion. which makes the weeding tricky sometimes.
Does that include all materials that are, I want to say online, but not necessarily online? Like our district has adopted a Destiny. I think all 67 counties use it in Florida, but some of our schools don't have libraries at all. They're just on Overdrive or on Destiny. So I think that requirement still could be met.
Destiny is the company in which you put your curriculum on. It doesn't carry books unless you've specifically purchased a book per unless you've done their online collection. Destiny is just the shell in which you put your stuff in, whether or not it's physical or online, just FYI.
Okay.
And I would say that a lot of those schools who are completely online are not really actually meeting the needs of their students, but that's neither here nor there because research shows they want physical print. People do, but
I
that's
agree with
another
that.
issue.
But also Hillsborough County, which is one of our largest districts in the state, does not utilize Destiny as their online catalog system. They have a completely
What county, I'm
different one.
sorry?
Hillsborough County.
Oh, that's interesting. I thought somebody had told me from our district that all Florida counties used it. So that's interesting. Do you mind
they don't.
asking, do you mind me asking what online system you use?
I'm not sure what system they use. I just know for sure it's not Destiny. I cannot
Okay.
remember the name of their system. And there are some other small counties that also do not utilize Destiny.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Destiny is a popular option, but some districts do not use it, and there's nothing that says that they have to. It's up to the district again, which it's cataloging or maintenance management software that they're using in the library itself to manage the collection.
So in regards to this piece of the training, this would just be going over the different pieces to look at, which I think this piece of it is probably like the least questionable across the board for our team here.
Right.
So it's just coming up with, please keep in mind the overall collection needs, look at use. I mean, we just need to start listing the things that they want to list there.
And a lot of these elements of the training do intersect quite a bit with each other. We've already talked about like most of this stuff.
And this would
So-
intertwine with that collection
It does.
development and acquisition part, correct? Because that would also then go back into those 10 books per students, the preservation of a collection, and that is important for weeding and how we do preserve what our students have. And that's important to note because we cannot constantly be just removing and deselecting because then we wouldn't have libraries. There would be no purpose in what we're doing here right now.
Right.
Where I see a benefit for, as Chris said, creating those lists would be for those districts or schools who do not have a certified media specialist within each of their schools, who might have that situation where the more books we have, the better, regardless of whether they fit the curriculum, if they're out of date. Many districts who have had donations of books where people have put them on the shelves. So I do think this is a very important part, but I agree with Chris. I think this is very cut and dried. There's a lot of standards out there from ALA to different library schools that can help us with these.
Okay. Sounds good. So I'm hearing that this is not going to be something that we need to have a whole lot of discussion about. So let's move on to the second point, which is, we've talked about these issues already, but if you remember back to the first PowerPoint from the very first meeting, there were kind of two parts to our training. One is all the stuff that we've discussed thus far. This last bullet point is to assist instructional materials reviewers in complying with the requirements of section 1006.31 paren 2. Probably a lot of these things that are in this one are, going to be the same as what we're going to tell our media specialists in that training. But this is in the statute that part of our job is to create this training that also assists instructional materials reviewers. So we've talked about accurate, objective, balanced, non-inflammatory, current, free of pornography. We haven't really talked about the other two bullet points, but I know we want to talk a little bit about that pornography one. First, is there anything anyone wants to say in terms of looking at this through the lens of instructional materials reviewers versus our media specialists? Anything to consider that's going to be different than what we've already talked about?
Yeah, I guess in terms of that, like for a school media specialist to instruct instructional materials reviewers, what do we mean? Or do we mean like teachers, or are we talking more of a district level? Because we wouldn't expect like our school-based librarians to go and consult with our instructional, like our director of curriculum and instruction. That would be more of a district level thing.
And I actually serve two hats. So I serve instructional materials and library media. And when I do the training, we talk about the fact, look at the pictures. Are the pictures representing broad amount of people? Do you see male and female who are doing a broad different kinds of jobs? Are you seeing that in the visuals, in the examples? That kind of thing is that second bullet point. Do you see it reflecting your community of a variety of kinds, both in the examples that are given, in the stories that are shared, in the pictures that are shown? And in terms of pornography, when I've led this with my group, really the issue about the free pornography is usually when it's ELA. For instructional materials, that's usually not an issue that you see outside of the discussion about what novels you use in high school. But, and the second and third one are very close together. How are they talking about, Florida's a very diverse community. So are you seeing all the aspects of Florida represented? Are you seeing Latinos, people who are handicapped, handy-abled, whatever the new word is, all of that kind of thing? Are you seeing those in the student materials that are given to our students? So I hope that perspective helped.
What I'm asking is an instructional material reviewer, like, is that a teacher? Like, is that what we mean here?
Yes. Yes.
So that's it might need. I could see how that could be confusing, because it could also mean,
it's a teacher or a district level staff. Those are usually, but it could also be parents, because parents and community people are now requesting to be on the instructional review material.
Yeah.
So, especially the people outside of the education world, they might know that I know in our rubric that we use for instructional materials, we actually have to, that is a rubric that they have to sign off on. So, so you do have some people who are not as familiar with the instructional materials.
Because the community can have input on the review of instructional materials, and that's a very important aspect to this.
And they are specifically requested to be on those committees, not just giving input at the end as well.
Thank you for that distinction, Chris. That's helpful when we think about this part of the statute in terms of instructional materials reviewers versus our library media folks. I wanted to go ahead and give Michelle Beavers came up with a couple slides that she wanted to talk about today in terms of the harmful to minors statute.
Can you hear me?
Hang on, Michelle. Let me bring up the slides and then I just gotta find it here.
So that was the first, yeah. So we seemed to have a problem last time understanding some of what we're talking about. Like, we seem to be talking in two different ways. One of the things that came up was someone said, and harmful to minors. So if I'm looking at this Florida statute that we have on the right, I'm sorry, on the left, to a minor on school property or post on school property any material described in subsection 3 above. So that's any picture, photograph, drawing, sculpture, motion picture, film, video cassette, or similar visual representation of an image of a person or portion of a human body which depicts nudity or sexual conduct, sexual excitement, sexual battery, bestiality, or sadomasochistic, abuse, and which is harmful to minors. Any book, pamphlet, magazine, printed material, however reproduced, or sound recording that contains any matter defined in 847.001, explicit and detailed verbal descriptions or narrative accounts of sexual excitement or sexual conduct, and that is harmful to minors. And on the right, free photography and material prohibited under 847.012, which is what I just cited. So I can't understand why anyone would think the words "and harmful to minors" wouldn't include all the stuff I just read. I believe when it says "and harmful to minors," is trying to exclude things like non-sexual nudity, and also materials that you'd be using for instruction, like avoiding diseases, or basic classes that would have to do with the function of the human body. If I'm missing something, I'd like to have a discussion on this. It seems to me anything having to do with sexual interaction is off limits if we're doing what we're supposed to be doing in this group.
And I read that differently. I read it as saying it has to be also harmful to minors, and that's where the whole the age appropriate content comes in there. So there's some things you can talk about in high school that you would not talk about in elementary school. A lot of the Greek myths. That means if you're saying Greek myths, if you didn't view the "and harmful to minors" piece of it. So that's the "and harmful to minors" to me is very important because that's where age appropriate comes in there. I'm not sure what the other group thinks, but
I'm trying to, for some reason you just went off. Can you hear me?
yes.
Hello? Yes. Okay. All right. For some reason it just muted and unmuted on by itself. So if you look at the next slide, harmful to minors means any reproduction, imitation, characterization, description, exhibition, presentation, or representation of whatever kind of form depicting nudity, sexual conduct, or sexual excitement. So I'm reading that. It's the next slide. I don't know, Amber, if you want to put on there so they can read it for themselves. If that is what harmful to minors means, then it seems like it's no, not that one. It's that one. It seems like it's off the table.
But then it says the A, B, and C. So it says it's predominantly appeals to, and then it says is patently offensive to prevailing standards. And then it says, and when taken as a whole is without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. So when you have that word "and," it has to include A, B, and C for it to be considered harmful to minors. That's how I read it. So when someone says, we do need a definitive clarification on this because we're all reading this differently. And I agree with what someone said in the chat. Every family is different. So every family is going to decide what's appropriate for their family. And a library is there for self-selection. So a family can certainly say this isn't appropriate for our family, but we all have to make sure that we have appropriate material for every family. So, but when we're reading, which is neither here nor there, when we're reading the statute says harmful to minors includes all three of these things because of that word "and." It doesn't say "and or," it doesn't say "or," it says "and."
Right, but on the Florida statute it says any book, pamphlet, magazine, printed material, however reproduced, and explicit and detailed verbal descriptions of narrative accounts of sexual excitement or sexual conduct.
But then it says "and," which is harmful to minors, and so determining what's harmful to minors is going to be different because a minor can be someone who's 6 and a minor can be someone who's 17. So something that's harmful to a 6-year-old is not going to be harmful to a 17-year-old. So that harmful to minors is what's up for interpretation. And again, the word and is in the statute because it says and which is harmful to minors.
I mean, that's totally up to the parents, though. I
Absolutely
wouldn't
it
allow my
is.
17-year-old to read The Bluest Eye, just like I didn't allow my 17-year-old to have social media.
Exactly.
So it's.
But it's in our library,
And
which
that's parent rights.
they can go sit down in the library and read that without your knowledge. And that's the problem, is if they're going to put
Right.
if they're going to put it behind a librarian's desk, I really don't have as much problem with that. But when you have it out on the shelves and my child can go pick it up, not knowing what The Bluest Eyes is about, start reading a book in the library and seeing and having things put in their head that they don't want in their head, that they don't know until they've read it, isn't fair. So if you want to put them behind the librarian's desk and we can make that part of the training, I have less problem with that. But it's, I mean,
But that
predominantly,
part's not in the statute. Like we have to stick to the statute of 847, I mean, the statute of 1467, and we have to provide this training saying that we have to put things that some parents find inappropriate behind a librarian's desk is not part of the law. So
okay,
we have to stick to the training that's in the law. I know that some districts have chosen to have tiers of access levels. I'm in a district that has that. So some parents have chosen to not have library access for their students. So some districts have made that decision. But that part is not part of the training for media specialists on collection development and House Bill 1467. And I think that that seems to be what we have to stick with.
taken as a whole, is without serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value for minors. I don't see that serious literary value in this. It would have to be a long argument here.
And
So-
that's where community standards and library book reviews come in. Because literary standards, I mean, I sat on a book review of 10 books. Literary standards are there for with English teachers to and professors and people to comment on and have discussion about. So, but that's why it's there. And that's why it says taken as a whole, because we have to read the whole book to determine, and many people do. And that's why we read peer-reviewed journals to make sure that someone has read. I mean, there's so many things put into this. And so obviously we could argue the point here forever because lots of people have been doing that. And so I don't think that's the purpose of our meeting or our training, other than to say, the state has asked us to come together as a community to provide this training for library media specialists across the state. We need to make sure that we are providing them training on the statutes. And this seems to be a statute that is a sticking point. So we need some clarification.
Well, I definitely agree we need clarification on that. Agree. But in my mind, when I'm reading this, without serious literary, I mean, I can't see the literary value when you're trying to sexually excite a minor. And that's what these books are doing, period. That's the problem. Why would you think it's okay to sexually excite a child in school? How is that okay? It's prurient. I mean, we're talking about encouraging, and that's part of it. Predominantly appeals to prurient. So encouraging an excessive interest in sexual matters, and that's what this kind of literature does. I don't see a way around that.
Well, and I think that is where, oh, go ahead, somebody else talk.
Oh, yeah, that was me. Sorry. I was just going to say, thank you for all of your comments. This has been great discussion. We have things to work out for sure. One idea is for the training, I was hearing some people or Michelle saying, that's not in the statute. That's not, what we're tasked to do. And other people saying, but, we need to tell them about this, and this. And we talked about this before at the first meeting, is in the training to provide, like, this is the statutory, this is what the statute says we have to comply with this, and this, and list those things. And then we can have, a potential practices, or, maybe not best practices or potential practices, or, here are some ideas for different ways that you can comply. Here are some, additional things that you can do in your district if you wish to. So that's, I think that was one way to kind of get around this disconnect that we're feeling between what's actually written in statute and what's and the different interpretations of the harmful to minors statute. So let's continue to think about that. I'm gonna thank you very much, Michelle, for sharing your slides, for providing that for us and sharing your thoughts and insight into that. I thought it was really helpful to hear what you were thinking. I'm gonna go back to.
Oh, one more
Okay.
thing on this, right before I was speaking, you had the accurate, objective, balanced, non-inflammatory, current, free of pornography written under assist instructional materials. What was left off of that is and material prohibited under 847.012. I just wanted to point that out, that was left off for some reason. We might want to put that back there when we're talking about this. Sure.
Okay, you should be able to see that now.
The very first one under assist instructional materials. It says free of pornography, and it should also read and material prohibited under 847.012. That's how it originally read, but that was just
Okay.
so I just wanted to put that back on there so we would have that as a reference.
Yeah, it's totally possible that I missed that when I wrote that. So thank you for that. 847. I will when I post this, I will or I'll add that.
All right, thank you.
Oh, Jennifer has. Oh, sorry, Jennifer. Hang on. I gotta get to you here.
Jennifer's muted. I think she.
Yeah. Oh, whoop. Sorry, it's a pain having. Oh, it says you're on. Oh, I see you're on here twice. That's why. Allow mic and allow camera. Okay, Jennifer, you should be good. Sorry, I had you on here twice, so it looks like you were good, but you're not. Did you have something to add? Sure. Did you have something to add, Jennifer?
No, I think Michelle covered it very well. Thank you.
Okay. All right. It's 1:48. We haven't really talked about the second two bullets, accurately portray the ethnic, socioeconomic, cultural, religious, physical, and racial diversity of our society. And we haven't talked about may not contain any matter reflecting unfairly upon persons because of their race, color, creed, national origin, ancestry, gender, religion, disability, socioeconomic status, or occupation, or otherwise contradict the principles enumerated under Section 1003.42, paren 3. Does anybody have anything quickly to add about those two bullet points before we move on?
Do we need to mention what the 1003.42 is? I've got that if you need it.
Sure, that's the Principles of Individual Freedom statute
For
that
students in
was
grades.
by House Bill.
Sorry?
Yes, that was House Bill 7, amended Section 1003.42, paren 3, to include the principles of individual freedom, which essentially says what's in that third bullet point there.
It said benefits of sexual abstinence as the expected standard and the consequences of teenage pregnancy is what I read. Is that not correct?
I'm going to have to look that up. I do not have that statute in front of me.
I believe you have to look at the actual parentheses 3 piece of it.
Mm-hmm.
I have that it says the legislature acknowledges the fundamental truth that all persons are equal before the law and have inalienable rights. Accordingly, instruction and supporting materials on the topics enumerated in this section must be consistent with the following principles on individual freedom. No person is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. And it goes through their paren 8, B, C, D, E, F. Goes through there.
And I believe we did have this in the first training, but if not, I have slides with that information on that I can send you if you'd like to look at them.
That would be great, because for some reason I have it as written as something else. I don't know
Okay,
how.
I'll send them after the meeting.
I also put it in the chat box. Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Michelle, it's a little confusing because 3 is mentioned a couple times, so it's like, which 3 is it talking about? Just
It's not easy to read
you
those
weren't crazy. There
statutes.
were a couple other 3s in there.
Okay, that's
It
probably
is
what I
not easy to read those. I'm still learning. Okay.
Oops.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying there's so many statutes. It's just, you know, yeah, we have to have a training for our statutes for our training for the librarians.
Exactly. We all need a training on all of the statutes. Okay, just in the interest of time, I know we still need to talk about some of those things with that last bullet point, but I wanted to talk about possible slide assignments for the next meeting. If we're envisioning like a PowerPoint or something like that, I think that's kind of the best way to start it off. I mean, it may evolve to be some kind of other training, but I think a PowerPoint would probably work for our needs. So I'm going to go through some of these things that we've talked about, and you can kind of self-select which ones that you would like to work on. And what I'd like to do is come back next week with these slides. You know, you can create 1 or 2 slides or 3, or, you know, however many you need to talk about your selection, and we can discuss them from there, and that'll kind of be the bones of our training. So does that make sense? Okay, so is there anyone that would like to specifically talk about collection? Sorry, I'm trying to bring you guys up again. Collection development, collection policy development and examples. There's anyone that would like to create slides about that? Okay, maybe Christy?
Amber, I really think that probably, as somebody else stated, this is where we feel the most trepidation as far as what exactly the statutes are saying and stuff. So I'll be happy to start it if there's somebody else who would like to sort of work in conjunction with me.
And collection, that one is a big one because all of this is in the collection policy. But for this, I was envisioning like I mean, we have some posted in that Teams channel, some examples that we can use. You know, it can be kind of a fill in the blank thing, like this is what I do for weeding, this is what I do for, you know, it's just to get some ideas out, and then we can talk, and then hopefully next week we can talk and adjust, you know, kind of on
I
the
can help with
fly
that.
all together. Okay, Christy and Amelia for that one. Okay, how about, and again, like a lot of this is tied together, selection and maintenance. Is there anyone that would like to take on selection and maintenance?
I can work with that.
That's Chris. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Can we also, if we haven't volunteered for one, can we bring slides and just, or do you want us to collaborate with a other person?
You don't need to collaborate. You can work on your own if you'd like. And I have a number of things, so I'm sure there's something in here for you, Michelle. How about using peer-reviewed journals?
I can do that one. This is
Which
Jared.
actually,
Sorry.
Michelle, okay.
which goes with mine as well. So I mean, because a lot of the
Right.
selection is the.
They
You want to
all
work
go
with me?
together.
Not really. Okay,
Spoiler
Chris.
alert.
I'll do peer review
They
journals.
all go together. Journals. Okay, how about collections built based on reader interest, standards, academic needs of students and faculty? Okay,
I must have, I'm a little confused because like what you just mentioned was going to be in my slide. So I'm like, okay, well, wait a minute.
Well, and
does that make sense?
fine.
I'm like, because they're all like, you are exactly right. They're also interwoven with each other.
So then,
I'm happy
Christy,
to
I'm
take that
gonna
one and
put-
work with Chris.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
okay, so that's Ruth and Chris.
Yes, ma'am. It's Ruth
Okay.
Whitter.
And yeah, I mean, I just, quickly threw these out here. A lot of these are going to be the same thing. So if you hear one that you thought was yours, like just claim it and then you can add it to yours. Book selection in terms of free of pornography, age appropriate, suited to student needs and comprehension.
I think we need some clarification from attorneys or something before, because
Agreed.
there's too much disagreement on this one for
Okay.
any of us to come to a consensus on that one.
100% agreed, Michelle. I think that we will be able to work better for the state if we can get this addressed through the state. Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, let's pause on that one then. How about removal of books based on the one that we just talked about? Physical condition, rate of circulation, alignment to state standards. Anyone that wants to tackle removal?
I'd be happy to do that. And if somebody wanted to work with me, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer.
I can work with Jennifer.
Okay, Jennifer and Lori. Okay, awesome. So as you complete these, if you can get them to me before our next meeting, let's put a deadline of like Monday by, but Monday night, let's say, so that I can put them all together for our meeting on Tuesday. That would be fabulous. And then I can put them up and then you can talk about your individual slides and we'll work from there. One more
Can
thing,
you
I'm
send
sorry.
can you send us a template that you want us to work from? If you want us on PowerPoint, like I can come up with some pretty PowerPoints, but I'm not quite sure you want me to do that. So
it's gonna have to be like our standard DOE
well, that's yeah. So
PowerPoint.
right. So I didn't know if you needed to send us, like, I don't know where your stuff is. So
Yeah.
I'm very visual.
Just do it on a blank PowerPoint, and then when it comes to putting it all together, we can put the DOE template and clean it up. And then the last one, instructional materials reviewers. Is there anyone that wants to take that one, that last bullet point that we talked about today?
I can work on that.
Who was that?
Michelle.
Michelle.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'll work with Michelle on that if that's okay.
Okay.
This is
sure.
Jamie.
Michelle, Peters, and Jamie.
So I have a question when you get done too.
Okay, I'm done. Go ahead.
So you said you're going to get clarification on the pornography and sexually explicit material, I guess. How are we doing that, and who from? How does that work?
I can go to our DOE legal team. Previously, they've told me that they're not going to define it beyond anything that's in that harmful to minors statute. I can bring it up again and say, we're struggling. My group is really struggling with this. And maybe they can provide additional guidance at that time.
Amber, a question is I know when I've done this with my folks before, I just put the statute up there. I think it's the definition which makes it difficult. And so the question from the DOE is, do you notice define it, or are we simply just sharing this is the statute?
Right, because we're not attorneys. So
right.
And we don't play one on TV. So
that's how we're going to address this training is we're going to put up the statute and say, statutorily, you must follow this statute in terms of collection, selection, blah, blah, blah. I don't see any other way around it. We're not, we can't define it.
Okay.
Is it possible we can put some slides together anyway and have that at least as a talking point? Because we need to discuss it regardless.
Sure.
Even if our opinions don't quite match.
I feel like we had to have our school board attorney actually discuss this with us, because I think that's important that a lawyer is actually going through this, because there are those 3 bullet points that are very important that we go through. We should not interpret the law if we are not legal attorneys. I don't feel confident saying to do A only, B and C. And that's I have taken a legal class or 2, but I am not an attorney and I've not passed the Florida bar to be one. And so I really
To make you feel better, all of our, so we're putting together the training. It's going to go through a number of different approval levels here at the DOE. One of those steps is our legal team. So they will all look at it. They will have edits. Everybody will have edits. You know, what comes out may be a little bit different than what we put into it, but they'll try to stick to, you know, the gist of what we said, as long as it's legal. So yeah, I wouldn't worry about that. Legal will definitely have eyes on it.
Thank you.
So do you want us to put some slides together independently and so we have a talking point, or just completely skip it until you hear differently?
Michelle, if you want to, you know, start putting some slides together, that would give us something to talk about when we get to that.
And I'll work with Michelle on
Michelle and Jennifer.
yes.
I mean, is
Okay.
it just going to make sense for us to say, here's the statute, don't do it?
It might.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Because we can't be like, here's an example, because we're not attorneys, so we can't say this is an example. Like, here's the statute. You have to follow the statute.
Right. And that may be what legal says to do in this point, but I'll consult
That
with
makes
them
sense.
and we'll find out. Okay, we are at after 2 o'clock already, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up for public comments. Before I do that, I'm gonna share this last slide, which is just my contact information. If anybody needs to call or email me, that is how you get a hold of me. I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. And we are now open to members of the public. So if you have a question, yes, I see Jen Cousins has her hand raised. If you have a question, members of the public, please raise your hand and then I can go ahead and unmute you. So Jen Cousins, I'm allowing the mic and camera. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I just want to say, as a mom of 4 public school kids who 2 are in elementary, 1 is in middle, and 1 is in high school, and I'm from a blue county, I'm really aggravated that I've spent the last hour listening to parent representatives who do not represent my family or my community at all. And I would also like to point out the absolute audacity of the state of Florida and the Department of Education for appointing 3 unqualified parent representatives, 2 of whom are Moms from Liberty, 1 who nominated herself and did not go through proper channels, and the other who is from the Florida Citizens Alliance. I think it's really gross, and I think Florida is failing us big time once again.
May I answer that?
No, thank you for your comment, Jen. Let's see, who else is, any other comments from the public? Go ahead and raise your hand. I don't see anybody else. Okay, then we are going to go ahead and end there if no one else has anything else to say. Again, thank you so much for this meeting. I know some of these discussions are not easy, and I do really appreciate you all standing up for what you believe in and trying to reach a consensus for this state training. So I will be talking to you over email as you send me those slides for the sections that you claimed this week. Thank you again so much. Have a great week. I'll see you guys on Tuesday.
Thank you, Amber. Bye, y'all.
Thank you, Amber. Continued safety.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you, Amber.